I think the hardest thing to achieve in this life is to develop consistency in your behavior, to be able to behave the way that each chapter of your life makes a sense. When you write a book, you try to create this continuity of your story. You create a plot that makes sense. You don't jump from one chapter to another, creating irrelevant events that doesn't have links in between them. That's how you lose your narrative, and therefore nobody's going to read your books. The same with life. You have to be careful the way you make decision. You have to see if it's consistent with your behavior. First, if you want to create strong narrative out of your life, you have to develop consistent behavior within yourself. You have to do something that's beneficial for your health or for your mind or for your intelligence, and do this again and again and again and again, developing good habits out of this practice. And what happens is, it doesn't matter how you feel, it matters what you do. And you have to do this again and again and again and again. That's how you develop consistency within yourself. And then you would project this consistency on the outside world and can become easily successful because you know what you want and you're ready to practice until this thing happens. But also if you make mistake, you do some adjustment. The same as editing in the book, because when you write a book, you are able to go back in the first, second chapters and re-edit them to adjust the story to the ending that you develop through the narrative. The same with life. Sometimes you have to go back in your memories and readjust your attitude toward certain things to be able to feel yourself more in present. Where are you now? We always change our mind on certain things. We always, when you find new information that challenge your current worldview, you have to be very careful, because you have to see if the argument behind this challenge is stable and is intellectual. It doesn't matter how it feels, it matters if this argument consistent with its own premises and also can be explained in a proper way. That's how you change your mind in the right way. The problem with us, sometimes we change our mind through emotions, and that can be, it's not good. What you do, you have to understand, okay, there's new information that I have right now, and how I can utilize this information properly in my current life, and then how I can derive benefits from this information. You have to always be able to adapt. You have to always learn to recognize patterns where many people aren't able to recognize those patterns. That's how you go ahead of many people. Because, I think in life, the entire idea of life is to be consistent in your ideas, and then when each step you make, you try to adjust your ideas. You keep this narrative, you keep this continuity in your life story, but also you try to adjust with each step to make your ideas that you've been carrying since 20 or for 20 years, to adjust to the current environment and to utilize them, not to reject, but to utilize and to be able to use advanced technologies, for example, and try to learn new things for yourself and increase your skill level, and also to learn new information that would help you to create new pathways in your neurological system. This way you become much more proficient in what you're doing with the new tools that available to you right now. And what you do, you implement this consistency that you have within yourself to the outside world, and then you keep walking. And when you recognize patterns where other people don't recognize them, that's kind of interesting, because in some sense you create new connection in life. It seems like everything in our life parallel. Like if you look at our neurons that create new pathways, new connections. For example, I have like little example that I'm doing. I've been brushing my teeth with my left hand for almost 2 months, and I noticed that it's getting more natural for me to do. Why I'm doing this? Because it's one of the easiest way to create new pathways and your neurological connections. It's kind of interesting to explore. And the same way in life, because you always try to find new pathways that you can connect that before seems were unconnectable. And that's how great minds like Elon Musk does. He can identify new ways to connect unconnectable and then to maximize profit out of those connections. And that's what you do. Like if you want to be successful in what you do, and first of all, it's simple mathematics. You have to work much more than people around you. When you work much more than people around you, you automatically become more successful than people around you. And also you have to take a risk, and you have to find new connections in your ideas and try to utilize them in a way that they weren't utilized before. And that's how you live your life. And that's how you write your own personal story. It's funny to think about us that the most thing that's stopping us from living meaningful life is this fear that other people watch us and judge us. We're always afraid to make a step in a different direction because we're terrified what would people think about us. But the funny thing about this idea that people don't think about us at all, like you don't think about other people, you only think about yourself and how other people perceive you. And the same thing happened with other people. They think about themselves and how you perceive them. In psychology, it's called spotlight effect, when people think they're on the spotlight, but in reality, we're not. And it's funny, I don't know why we have this idea in our heads that everybody mind our business, because nobody does and nobody cares. And literally everybody forget about you once you exit the room. And even often they don't care about you when you even in the room. But it's still somehow stopping us from doing something meaningful, from exploring something that grabs our attention, and therefore we're losing meaning and become incredibly miserable because we live the life of someone else. We pursue someone else's goals, someone else's dreams, while forgetting about ourselves out of fear to be judged, to be perceived in the wrong way, though we don't know what does it mean to be perceived in the wrong way. I think it comes from tribalism, when we were terrified that if you deviate from your tribe, you can be punished through abandonment, or you can literally die, or will be executed and prosecuted. That's what happened in tyranny, for example. When you have tyrannical government, if you have some deviation in your thoughts and in your thinking and in your actions, you can be easily prosecuted and placed in jail or in gulags or in concentration camps because of your ideas. And I think we have this internal fear that keep harassing us. Even now, living, for example, in the West, in the most prosperous and free time on the planet, where we can actually do whatever we want. And only, of course, it's a risk, of course, but that's how you write your own book. You write your own book through your own narrative. And what you do, you follow your own plot basic on your thoughts. You try to understand what you really, really want, what really, really grips you, not what other people, because other people don't matter in this case. And this idea that you have to always have the same car as your neighbors or better, or you have to have more money than your neighbors or other things. It's just materialistic stuff that don't matter. What matter is to understand who you are and what you really want. And everything else becomes irrelevant because you can drive an old car and you can live in a small apartment and you can actually get along on a small amount of money if you're careful and if you have the idea of how you're supposed to live. The whole point to write your own narrative, your own story, the whole point to write one chapter at a time, one page at a time, one paragraph at a time, one sentence at a time, one word at a time. But every time when you write those things, you have to think carefully because this is your life, this is your story. And if you don't have a story, you don't have a life, you just have an existence, a fearful existence that makes no sense. And if it makes no sense, every time when you suffer, your suffering got amplified by the senseless idea of the suffering itself. Because if you don't have a story, if you don't know why you're walking toward to, then every time when you suffer, you have no idea why it's happening to you. You didn't do nothing, but that's the problem. You will suffer anyway, and better to clothe, to dress the suffering of yours into the meaning that it gives you such an idea of why you're suffering, because of the changes or because of the sacrifices that you're making, because this right away elevates you above your existence, and suddenly you feel that you're truly alive until you keep continuing writing your story. You keep continuing understanding yourself through the story and the people around you. Because life is not the way we thought. Because when I was a kid, I thought about my life in a much more different way than I'm thinking about it right now. And all my ideas were changing gradually. I mean, I had such a core within me, but all my ideas, all my desires and wishes were changing gradually. I still wanted certain things and I still try to accomplish certain things, but I changed drastically, and that's what life is. That's what your story is. It changes you, because the longer you live, the longer your story goes, the deeper, the more deepness you discover within. And because if you don't discover deepness within your own story, there's no way for you to discover deepness in the life around you. And that's can be the problem, because you're going to be busy with this fear that everybody watching you, everybody judging you, while in reality nobody cares. And in some sense, you're stopping yourself from achieving the success of your own story, of finishing your own book, your own life, through this delusion of the spotlight. And I think it's good to understand, and it took me a while to find this and to try to understand, because I always ask myself a question: why do I care what other people think? Why do I care what? And then suddenly there's nobody think about you. Nobody cares. It's only you against you. It's only your story and your desire to write the story, and nobody forcing you. You don't have to write your story. You can stop your story anytime you want and become an extra and completely dissipate yourself into existence. But it's hard to come back to writing your own story. Once you stop doing it, once you stop forcing yourself to keep your life in such an order, in such an pursuit of the plot, then everything became chaotic. There's no more chapters, and you become an extra, and you just find yourself inside of the story of someone else, where you have no control of a narrative, where you only rely on luck of your existence.